live. Welcome to Anaheim. Oh, hey, Resist already online. Cool.
You guys can, sit around here, and we can talk to you.
Yeah,
oh,
you have to get to the baby. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, of course it is.
Okay.
No, babies have to be in the front. Maybe we should move so they can be in the shade. So people can have,
yeah, we can reverse this.
Why don't you
yeah,
go
yeah,
there and I'll turn the camera around?
Yeah, we'll still get light over there.
So people have the option to be
Yeah.
Camera with you.
Sure.
shade or not. I mean, it'd be nice if we sit in a circle. I'm not trying to, be in front of everybody. So do you have a seat?
I will.
All right.
So get good light here.
Poor network connection. Really? I got my hotspot set up. Why? Okay, so I'll sit there maybe.
Okay, whatever.
You got the baseball diamond behind us. Welcome to Stoddard Park. All right. All right. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Freedom. This is
Sky.
Sky. We are live streamers. We're from Los Angeles. We've been covering a lot of the Occupy Los Angeles and other actions. And we wanted to come today to offer this training as a resource for the community, for anybody who's interested in learning how to live stream. In my experience, it's a powerful, non-lethal weapon. It's a non-violent tactic that can be used to document the police activity and especially the police misconduct in order to hold them accountable, and also to help be the eyes and ears for the rest of the world to be a witness as to what's happening here in Anaheim and elsewhere, anywhere that we go. There's our orange
Hey!
our local orange.
So one thing that I like to say is that streaming is a tool. It can be used for lots of different things, and talking about it being a nonviolent weapon, if a pen is mightier than the sword, and a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you get 32 frames per second, that's 32,000 swords per second. You get 1,000 people, that's 320,000 per second, right? So, and it's something that does not hurt. It's never going to physically cause damage, ever. Even if you threw the phone at someone, it's not going to cause any physical damage, probably. So, much less lethal than rubber bullets or anything like that. Did you want to start with setting up the account stuff?
Yeah, so can we get a show of hands? Anybody here who's interested in actually picking up this tool and learning it?
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great. Ooh, let's do it.
Yeah,
okay,
let's do
so
it.
we'll start with some of the basics. The first thing that you want to do is set up an account, which is generally easier done on a desktop computer than a smartphone. And there's two different services that provide mobile streaming apps now. One is Ustream and the other is Bamboozer. So it's ustream.tv or bamboozer.net, and you can go there. It's very self-explanatory. If you don't have a computer, maybe you can go to the library and set up your account there. So the first thing you want to do is set up an account on, I would recommend doing both channels and both apps so that if one goes down, you have the other as a backup at all times. Yeah.
Sure. Another thing that becomes extraordinarily useful with doing the streaming is actually having a social media connection through Twitter. So if you set up a Twitter account, you'll definitely want to do that. And within these, you can link Twitter to the streaming application. So when you go live, it goes out to your Twitter audience. And when it goes out to your Twitter audience, they can come and watch. You can also put out information, even if you, for whatever reason, can't actually stream, you can put it out on Twitter. You can put information out on Twitter. So it's extraordinarily useful to have. You could also connect like Facebook if you are so inclined to connect that to be able to announce to your friends or your followers when you're broadcasting, and that ends up driving the viewership to your channel, because it's sometimes very difficult for them to know when you're live otherwise.
Right, and the thing is, when you're starting out on Twitter, you're not going to have a lot of followers, but it's okay because it does grow organically, especially the more viewers you have. And the thing that's great about Twitter and social media in general, but especially Twitter with the live streaming, but Facebook as well, but Twitter seems to be a much bigger for the connecting to the live streaming users. The reason is if things start getting really hairy, and if things start becoming violent, the viewership goes up very quickly because there are a lot of different channels that rebroadcast. Like Global Revolution is a great example. They are consistently rebroadcasting streams from all over the world, wherever the revolution is happening. So wherever the action is, Global Revolution is mirroring that stream. So if you get word that you're on Global Revolution, you can introduce yourself to the audience and try to drive people to your chat room and live tweet from there, because suddenly, you have 500 people watching, and if 20 of them jump into the chat room, which is a pretty realistic, ratio, and encourage them to live tweet, you can set up the hashtag on the back end of your Ustream account. At Bambuser, I assume has the same, though I haven't really done it yet. With Ustream, you can set up an automatic hashtag like that says Anaheim or something. So anybody in the world looking for information on Anaheim can go into Twitter and just put in hashtag Anaheim, and it'll send people to your stream. So your viewership can go up very quickly, and you can spread the information that's happening in real time virally very quickly. So enabling that social media component is a piece that really helps exponentially get the information out there more quickly. It's not essential to streaming, because the streaming is helpful because not only do you have witnesses in real time and the information is going out, but also because it automatically records. So when your recording stops, there's an archive there already. So you're not only streaming live, but you're having this visual record, a document. It's like you're videotaping, but it's done automatically for you. So that can be used, later for other purposes to, like, there's a 5-minute or 2-minute segment from Sky's feed when he was down here on Tuesday night.
Revolutionary Z did it.
Yeah, Revolutionary Z is one of our friends. He's a streamer in Chicago. He made a highlight of this 2-minute, was it 1 or 2 minutes?
That's about 2 minutes.
Of Sky capturing some really extreme police force where they shot a man in the chest. He was 5 feet away from them against a wall of, 7 or 10 cops at least?
There was a bunch. I didn't get an exact count.
And from what I understand, the man was trying to receive his bicycle and maybe was asking to get through the line. Is that what happened?
Yes.
It's seen on the video?
Yes. And they didn't want to let him through the line and then discharge the firearm. While there were so many police officers there, they might have been able to use some other method that would not have
One would think, So I would consider that excessive police force. So now we have this 1-minute or 2-minute little clip that we can put out on Twitter, we can put out on Facebook, we can give it
YouTube
to the media, put it on YouTube. Yeah, also Ustream has the ability that you can upload things to YouTube on the back end very easily. That is a great tool. So these are things that we can get out and get the word out, even if it's not happening in real time, after the fact, that night, the next morning, whatever, and show people and help people understand the reality of what's happening on the ground here, so the people of Anaheim can tell their story and have more witnesses, hopefully enabling more support for the struggle that's happening here. That's the goal.
Yeah, and then the next part of this is just a sort of a little detail to keep in mind is when you're setting up your accounts and you set up a Ustream account. If it's a Ustream account, it'll have a name. If it's a Bambuser, it's a number. But if you have a Ustream account,
In time, I would not be Occupy Freedom LA.
I would not.
I would be OFLA.
Yeah, I'd be like CXB instead of cross_X_bones.
Yeah, I think that's always a moment to type that. So take that into account when you're naming your channel and when you're naming your handle. Try to keep it as short and concise as possible, and if possible, have the name of your channel and your Twitter handle identical. It'll just help the ease of information to go around.
We start talking about equipment.
Yeah, so then there's some basic equipment that's needed to live stream, and it's basically three components. One of them is power. because on your phone you're going to have about an hour, maybe hour and a half streaming, because it does suck a lot of juice out of your phone. So on a regular standard iPhone or a Droid, right, about hour and a half. So in a perfect world, you want an external battery source, and we can go into more detail on that. The second is, well, obviously you need a camera. Right, you need a camera. It can be done on a laptop, but that's obviously a bit cumbersome, especially when we're getting into actions where we're running around. So a smartphone is the ideal camera, and we can talk more in detail answer questions about what the specifics of that. And then the third is transmission, which Sky can speak to better than I can.
Yeah, okay, sure. So transmission is however you're broadcasting it. So generally speaking, if you're using a cell phone, that's going to mean 3G or 4G coverage. Even if you're broadcasting over a hotspot, that hotspot is either going to be 3G or 4G or be able to switch between the two. So it's there's a few things to know whether if you're on a 4G or a 3G. 4G has a pretty good data rate, so it gives you the flexibility of being able to pan a little bit more. It's going to give you higher definition regardless. With less what they call compression artifacts, which are those like little boxy, pixely looking things. So with 3G, what you end up having to do is do a lot more about stabilizing your image. So if you're going to move to a new location, you want to keep it like stay in one place for that. But some of these devices have the ability to kind of switch between them. They'll do it automatically. It'll sometimes go to a point where it's very clear, and then it's all pixely, and then it'll go back.
Skip as well.
It can skip as well. Yeah, it can skip. You can lose signal.
You can lose seconds of your broadcast. Like sometimes you'll see it'll say low network connection on the phone. It'll give you that heads up that you're having a connection issue, and then it'll basically freeze the stream, and then maybe come back on 5 seconds later. So you've lost 5 seconds of footage, which sometimes can be a critical 5 seconds depending on what's happening. So if you're able to get a hotspot, a 4G hotspot, and carry it around with you, that's really the very best way to do it, so you can have the clearest possible picture and the least interruptions in your signal. And the best option for that right now is the ClearSpot, right?
That's what I use. The clear spot. It's a 4G. The ones that are out right now are 4G only. They don't auto switch. But there's a fixed data plan, so you can't overcharge. You can't run over on that as you can with some of the other stuff that's out there. They have a limited amount of bandwidth before you go into this overcharge, and you can end up using a lot of bandwidth streaming. So it's actually something to always keep in mind. Another thing about it is that the coverage availability is something that's extraordinarily important, because without the coverage, without the cell phone coverage, the 4G, 3G coverage, you're not going to have video in the streaming. You can still record things, of course. You can always do a record mode, but you're not going to be able to stream. So knowing your area or the areas that you're planning on broadcasting and knowing what coverage of these different devices is important. Most of the time, most 4G is in a city. If you start going out into the middle of nowhere, it's only going to be 3G. So if you have something that only does 4G, you're not going to have coverage. But usually the phones have at least 3G on them. If you have a hotspot, you can go to a 4G. If you're not in an area that does 4G, you can always flip back to the 3G.
Right. Yeah, so the Clear channel, the Clear Spot, it's not Clear Channel, it's Clear Spot. Clear is $50 a month. There's no contract. It's unlimited data. I have a Verizon hotspot, which has 10 gigs of data, and it's about $80 a month for that plan. The plan goes from 50 to 80, so I have 80 because that's the max, is the 10 gigs. So when the contract is up on that one, I'm probably going to switch to a Clear, because that's kind of the best deal out there. And I would say that in order to get some equipment, I think that there's a real opportunity now, because all eyes are on Anaheim. It's very simple to set up a WePay page and do a fundraiser. I would recommend that maybe Occupy Orange County could lead the charge, or anybody that wants to do this, you can do it yourself. You can go to WePay.com, set up a donation page, explain who you are and why you want to stream, and ask people for donations, and people can send you money so that you can buy the equipment that you need. You don't have to do it all yourself. There's a lot of people around the world who want to support you in doing this.
And there's often people who will see that you have a WePay up, and on your WePay you can ask for donations of cash, or you can let people know that if they want to contact you to donate gear, if they're not comfortable sending money. I know a number of people who have had gear donated to them just by making contact with someone via an email or a tweet or whatever. There's a lot of people out in the world who are really interested and really supportive as to the different situations that are going on, and there's a lot of generous people who want to know and stay informed, and streaming is a really good way to have people stay informed.
This is Courtney, by the way.
Yeah, this is Courtney Occupy.
And just in terms of batteries, there's different kinds of batteries that you can use.
XPAL 18,000.
This is the Energizer. I love it. It only has one USB port. So to combat that, there's other ones. This one's called an iSound. It has 5 USB ports. But what I've found is you can only use 2 or 3 of them. You can't use all 5 at once, and it depends on what you're charging. The hotspot will go forever, and then you can plug in your phone. So oftentimes I just have my hotspot and my phone plugged into the iSound. I use the Energizer as a backup battery to charge the phone, because the Energizer will charge an iPhone
very quickly,
very fast. So I just use this to recharge the phone, and then I have 1 or 2 of these with me. And when all of these are fully charged, you can go for up to at least 3 days of straight streaming and charging.
Yep.
So, the iSound is a little bit cheaper. The Energizer was about $150. You can get it on Amazon, I'm sure, for much cheaper.
120 is the lowest I've seen.
And then I think the iSound is like 75 or 80.
Usually it's 75. I got one of mine for 35, but it didn't have the charger. So.
And like I said, people are really generous, and people are, there are streamers out there also who are no longer streaming, who have gear that could be willing. So there's lots of different ways to get set up for a fairly low cost, and with help of the community as well. And I know that there's a lot of people who want to see Anaheim be able to have the capacity to do streaming.
So we're going to talk about some best practices for once you do get up and running, but before that, are there any questions now at this point that anybody has?
She's got a question.
Anything? No?
Nothing yet.
I do have a point to make.
Yeah.
With your cell phones, just as a precautionary measure, make sure you have a password or lock pattern on your phone. There was a recent federal decision by a judge saying that they can take your phone and use it to impersonate you.
Yes.
To entrapment or any other kind of things they want to do, and they've declared that perfectly legal.
There's still some wrangling over the decision, but that's absolutely accurate. One of the things that unfortunately when someone takes the phone is that usually if you don't have a lock on it, it's pretty much it's open to anybody. They can see all your contacts and whatever. And I've also heard people talking about the lock patterns being problematic because it's pretty easy to see the little grease marks.
That's on a Droid.
Yes, but if it's a lock pattern, and you're using a symbol in general, it could potentially be pretty easy to decode. Now, sometimes the passwords get hard to type in quickly, so it's something that you have to kind of pay attention to. But that's absolutely true.
Yeah, I would add that to the best practices list. Actually, I didn't have that on there, but that is a good thing to add, to just remind people to lock your phones, because if it does get snatched out of your hand, you really don't want just anybody to be able to go through and find everything that's going on in your phone, invading your privacy.
Heck, I don't want anybody to go through my phone.
Well, you've had an experience where your phone has been removed from your hand.
Almost.
Right?
Almost.
No.
Yeah.
Sometimes
actually,
Oakland.
No, I got mugged in the middle of a march in Oakland. That's true.
Yes.
And sometimes the police will try to remove it, saying they're collecting it as evidence.
Right.
Right.
Material.
Yeah, in my
evidence
case,
to a
it
crime.
wasn't taken by the police. It was taken by someone else. Well, it might have been the police. I
But
still don't
even
know.
for, as far as safety purposes, that, someone in a march, whatever, snatches it, you don't necessarily want
Everything.
anybody
Yeah.
to have the access to the information.
Yeah, you don't want anybody. So it's a good idea to just have a lock on your phone.
Because when it's out here, it's a target.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know we have Courtney here today. We have Bella. I don't know if she wants to answer, get in the conversation. We have George. But we're going to talk about tips from giving you tips from people who have been doing the streaming. That you can.
These are important tips. So important.
There's a lot of important things, but we have a semi-short list of best practices of things that once you do get up and running with the streaming things that you want to think about doing. So we're going to start with lock your phone. Thank you for that addition. The next thing I say is to always announce yourself live to your social networks. So when you go live, you want to send out that tweet or that Facebook message and let people know that you're live so that you get eyes onto your stream. And then, why don't you go on?
Oh, okay. Yeah, one of the things that you really want to do is turn off all extra applications that are running, anything that takes extra processing power, because that extra processing power means more battery drain. And especially with something like the iSound, which might not charge it as quickly, you could end up running, even though it's charging, you could end up running down the battery. So it's always good to minimize that. I turn down my screen brightness. I usually can't see during the day what's coming through the chat, but it keeps things going. And another that's not on this list, that it's sort of a recent addition, I think, is that in the summertime, in the hot weather, these things have a tendency to overheat. And one thing that you can do is to put some cloth, damp cloth, something like that to help suck up some of that energy, and that'll keep it a little bit cooler, and it'll keep it from either freezing, stopping charge, because that happens sometimes too, and you won't know necessarily until it's off. And that's something I learned at NATO. So.
Yeah, NATO in Chicago, we had like a 90-degree day. That was crazy. And it was the same thing when I was in Philadelphia. I think both of my iSound batteries are damaged from the heat there. They are very heat sensitive. So you want to do what you can to, and they're cold sensitive too, because we were in January in DC. They were a little bit too cold to work. But I think that mine do have damage now, and what they do is they turn off and they stop charging. So I have two, so I just switch them back and forth, and that seems to be working for now. But I do need to replace some of my equipment that's damaged from the heat. So temperature is something to think about with the power sources and the phone. In Philadelphia, my phone kept turning off because it was too hot. I get on the iPhone, it has a big yellow caution sign with an exclamation point. It says temperature, and then it just goes off. So having something to shade the camera can be a huge help for that. So I don't know, we could construct some sort of an umbrella
I'm working on it.
Of course you are. Skyborg is that guy. He does that stuff. So he's a good person to talk to about technical things like that. So another thing that's important to do is to turn on your call forwarding, or if you're on an Android, to turn off incoming phone calls. This is something that you can learn the hard way, or you can take the advice and do it, because what it does is if you get a call that comes in, it shuts your stream down. So I had, on example, F29 in front of Walmart, cops beating people. I'm in the middle of shooting it, and everybody's watching the stream. People start calling me. And I had forgot to turn on my call forwarding. So there's the phone ringing, drops the stream right in the middle of all the action. So take the advice to handle that before you go live. You want to forward on iPhone, you can go into airplane mode, I understand, although I've never tried that. Yeah, that works for you? Okay. That's probably the simplest solution. Otherwise, you can forward the number to another number.
Yeah, and on Android, if your Android platform doesn't have the ability to turn off the incoming calls, you can also download an application called Mr. Number, and that gives lots of flexibility about dealing with calls, and you can set it up in a way where it will stop incoming calls altogether. And it's
reject
lifesaver.
all calls. That's what they had on
reject
the
all calls.
Droid that I used to have.
Yeah.
And that goes for sound notifications too. If anybody was watching me on Raid Night in LA, you'll know that I hadn't learned that yet, and so for 15 hours straight, people heard every text that came in made a little bird chirp sound. No, it was like because people were retweeting, and it was like non-stop, and I was on the radio the next day, and they were laughing at me about it, but they're like, she can stream all night, but she can't figure out how to turn off the sound notification. So that's something for the Droid that's important, not so much on the iPhone. Another thing you want to do is, hopefully you can get some moderators for your stream, and you want to notify them when you're going live. Moderators become important because there are a lot of trolls who who are people who like to come into the chat rooms, and there's all kinds of different motivations, I think, for the different people that come in and consistently and come in with the intention to disrupt
in a negative way.
Yeah. So, for example, when I was watching Sky here in Anaheim on Tuesday, there was somebody saying, "Go slap that bitch for talking shit or whatever." It's like anybody who's inciting violence or insulting people
or spamming with the same thing over and over again so no one else can chat. A lot of those kinds of things can be very, very destructive to that social communication.
So, yeah, the chat room becomes very important with the streaming, because what you're doing is you're providing an opportunity to be, you're the eyes and the ears for people who can't be there for whatever reason. You have disabled people, you have moms at home with the kids, you have people in China, or Japan. I mean, we have people watch us from all over the world, so you're getting the word out. But the chat room is important because people can feel like they're participating, and it helps grow participation, for the whole social justice movement.
And there's another piece of that, if I can just...
What do you do if somebody is spamming your chat room?
Well, there's a few ways that you can handle it, but basically the easiest way is to, like what Freedom was saying, is have a moderator, and the moderator can come in and get rid of that person.
Moderator as like admin almost.
Essentially like a chat admin, It's possible to do it yourself, but almost impossible. So I do not recommend it. The applications are not really well suited for doing chat admin as a streamer, if you have a secondary device, you can actually do the moderation on the secondary device, but you wouldn't want to.
Yeah, especially
too much.
When you're trying to stream and you're trying to pay attention to your surroundings, and you're trying to engage with your chatters, it's next to impossible to try to moderate it. I would also suggest, if we're going to talk about moderators, is that you have multiple. So maybe you might have 5 people that you appoint, because if you only have one, there's no guarantee that your moderator is watching your stream at the time. You can coordinate with people or whatever, but it's just good to have a handful, because then you're almost guaranteed that one of them is going to know when you're live, and they can kind of come in and help manage. I know that sometimes I've been streaming and none of my moderators have been on, and I've had to send, an email or a direct message and been like, hey, can you just pop on my chat for a minute, because there's a problem. Because as your viewership goes up, the trolls increase. Sometimes you may only have 20 viewers and everything's fine, but there are other times where you might have 400 people watching, or 1,000, depending on the situation and what's happening. So it's a good idea to just have a handful of people that you can have as your support, who's not on the ground with you, who's at home. Because the other part of that too is that your moderators and the people who are watching your chat are very helpful in watching Twitter, watching other streams. Sometimes we're at an event, here there's 5 of us here who are streamers. We might be all in different locations, and I might go, oh man, I'm running low on a battery, I can't find Sky or Freedom. One of the chatters can be like, oh, Sky, he's a block over in front of the whatever, and so the people who are watching also have the ability to help us coordinate when we're on the ground, because we can't stop and call and do those things. So it's really, really important to have a support team who's not present at the action.
Absolutely.
Another way that mods can be useful, and I haven't set this up for myself yet, but I know other streamers that have the support. Mods can be useful also in terms of recording what you're streaming, so that if for whatever reason your footage isn't archived, which has been known to happen from time to time, and it seems to often be when there are some pretty intense situations that are getting recorded, so sometimes footage disappears. So if whoever's moderating for you, if they can be doing a screen capture and recording as you're streaming, that's another helpful thing, as well as making highlights, like we just said, our friend Revolutionary Z, who right away did this highlight when he saw Sky catch this, this excessive police force. He immediately did a highlight. It's very simple to do on Ustream, and anybody that has questions can contact us at any time to help guide you through it. But it's very user friendly, the platform, so anybody can really do that, and it's helpful to just get that out in real time and make it viral.
Go for it.
In order for another person to make a highlight for your stream, you have to remember to archive it first. So they can't do it while you're recording.
Right. Yes.
So, if an event happens, like in the situation that Sky recorded the other night, he immediately stop the recording so that it goes into the saved archive, and then, I mean, it takes 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You stop,
Start.
you stop, save, and restart,
Yep.
and then that enables people to go in and see your archive footage and start working on it immediately while you're doing other things,
Yeah.
and that can be so helpful.
Yeah. However, I am always cautious to restart, especially if there's action still happening. In my experience, I sometimes have trouble reconnecting. And there's nothing worse than being in a situation where there's a lot of action going on around you that needs to be, shown and recorded, and you can't get the app back up. I've had a lot of trouble with the Ustream app, and it's going down. It crashes on me all the time, and sometimes it won't let me log back on, especially if you're in a situation where a lot of people are on their phones and there's not a lot of bandwidth available, like, for example, at Occupy the Rose Parade. Nobody could connect there because there were 1 million people there on their cell phones. So you got to assess the situation, and generally, I mean, the best practices calls for, as soon as you capture something that you think is really important, to shut it off and to archive it and to restart so that it is archived so that it doesn't disappear. But
At the
it's
next
a
available
judgment call.
moment.
Yeah,
It's a
the
judgment
call as to when to do that.
And
So.
sometimes if you have problems reconnecting, or, people in your chat will say, oh, your video's frozen, or you're glitchy, or, any number of tech issues, the first thing to do is to shut off your hotspot, shut off your phone, give it 2 minutes, pull it back up, and that's probably solved a good 90% of any tech issues that I've had where my thing is not functioning, because sometimes it just sticks.
Yeah, it does.
Sometimes you just have to restart the whole setup, and that usually happens after a couple hours of kind of just straight stream.
Sometimes on the Droid platform, you can just stop the application, you can stop Ustream and just restart it, but otherwise, yeah, restart the phone. Any questions? This is kind of like getting into the nitty-gritty stuff, so no questions?
Okay. So.
Everybody awake?
They're listening.
Okay, I know they are.
Another thing you want to think about is narrating, because you're talking to an audience. People are watching you and listening to you. So it's good to introduce yourself right away, to identify yourself, to identify where you are, the time, the day. Welcome the people. Say, hey guys, it's Freedom. I'm here in Anaheim today. We're in front of Disneyland. We're about to, participate in a protest here that, and just kind of describe what's happening and where you are, especially if the crowd starts moving. Depending on the police presence, because sometimes you don't want to disclose your location if you're on a secret march. You don't want to necessarily disclose where you are, but if there are because the police do watch the streams. This is something that we just know. They are watching. It's a fact, yes.
100%.
Hi, guys.
They know. Yeah, hi. How are you today?
Well, it's like you'll log in, and there's always one viewer on your stream. Always. Always. Doesn't matter. You can log in anytime.
Go live, it's like the red light goes on.
And it's just like, oh, ding, 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 ding. It's like, oh, they're live. I can, almost see them with their excitement. And I always say hi. Hello to the one viewer who's always here.
So, you want to narrate and talk about where you are and what's happening and why you're there. If there's a big crowd, one of the most common questions is how many people are there. It helps if you assess the crowd size.
Sometimes hard to do, too.
Sometimes hard to do that, but you do your best. I mean, piece of information people seem to really want. Then, for me, it's important to interact with your audience, because for me, that's a big part of the streaming, is interacting with the chat room. Because otherwise you're just talking to yourself, So it's like I really invite people into the chat room. I want to invite people to be live tweeting from the stream and using that social aspect that's in the Ustream. They call it the social stream, where people can make comments about what's happening. Like, oh, I just saw a man get shot in the chest from 5 feet away, as our example that we keep going back to. And they can enable Twitter and Facebook, so that gets shared. And then obviously we know the power of social media and how that works. You can share that, and then who knows how many people share that and how many people got that piece of information, within 1 minute. So I always am encouraging people to come into the chat room and participate in the conversation, and hopefully be enlisting the social media tools that are there as well.
Probably covered most of that there.
Yeah, mute button.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that's useful to do is if there's information that people are putting out there, I mean, especially if you have a very, very large audience, if someone starts giving out their phone number they could be potentially called by several thousand people. So it's always really good to mute if you start seeing someone give out that kind of personal information that they may not be aware. It's good to mute that. I mean, there's only so much you can do with this medium to eliminate information since it's a live medium. And sort of also on that, you know, sometimes you might not want people's faces on camera. You can do a lot with either backlighting to keep that from happening or intentionally defocusing the device so it's blurred. And it's sort of the same kind of thing about protecting information.
Right, so, and a lot of the times, you know, you connect with somebody and they'll be like, do we have each other's numbers? And you might be giving your own phone number to someone. Just mute it, because you don't need the whole world to have your phone number.
And it's just a button.
It's
real
on
easy.
the screen, you just tap it. It's, yeah.
And also if there's tactical information, you know, about a plan as to maybe you're on a march, maybe the march is going to change directions, maybe an organizer is going to come up and have a dialogue with you because you're streaming about where they're going. And, you know, sometimes marches change directions quickly for reasons that you don't, you know, want whoever's watching to know.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So be thinking tactically too when you're recording, because it is going out live, and you know that you do have an audience, and some people you may not want to have that tactical information. So going into the, you know, following up on the mute button and sensitive information, something you may want to think about is identifying or not identifying people by name, especially when it comes to protesting. A lot of people cover their face for a reason. It's because they don't want to be identified. So it's good to be sensitive to that. And, you know, we've all made the mistake, I certainly have, of just forgetting that and calling people by name on the stream. But just what you're doing is identifying them to the authorities when you do that they may not want to be identified to. So generally...
Even if they're not doing anything, they're just being surveilled then, and then they're going to be followed and all that stuff.
Our footage has made it on news channels and other areas, you know, and as Freedom says, people have many reasons for wanting to cover their face. And it's like, you might not, you know, you might just be filming and it just might be like a slip up or whatever, but that footage could end up on the 6 o'clock news broadcasted nationally and could be a very dangerous situation for some people.
So something to definitely think about and be conscious of is identifying people and trying to make it clear to people that you're live streaming, because it's still a new medium to a lot of people, and they may not understand that they're being broadcast live on the internet at that moment. They may just think you're recording. So, you know, if certainly if somebody starts talking about sensitive information, you want to inform them. It's difficult to let everybody know, you know, everybody that may be in the vicinity that may be captured in the frame, but especially when sensitive information starts becoming disclosed.
It's actually one of the most common things, too, I think, in my experience, is that people think that it's a recording device and that, oh, can you edit that out? And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah,
it's
I saw
out
that
there.
happen to you, Dan.
Yeah.
A slightly off question.
Sure.
A lot of us don't have smartphones, don't look forward to being able to afford one anytime soon because of sponsorship or whatever. Some of us do have cameras that can take video and stuff. Do you guys know of any options of how we might be able to use that?
Yes.
So the question is,
The question is, there's a lot of people who don't have smartphones, which primarily these are for smartphones, and because they don't have smartphones, how can they do some of this recording of things and get it out there and whatnot? There's a few options. Now, one of the reasons that people use Bamboozer is because the phone requirements are less. So that's actually one option sometimes that's available, even if I think on some non-smartphones. Other options for doing this would if it has, I mean, there's so many different varieties of non-smartphones, and they all have separate platforms. The only one I know off the top of my head is the Brew platform. But most of these, they might have some sort of video recording. It might be limited. And once you have that video recorded, there's usually some way to get it off your phone using some sort of micro USB or something like that. You can get it to a computer. You can upload it to YouTube. That's one option. The other option would be most devices now, non-smartphones, also have that Twitter ability, right? So if you wanted to do something that's out there and do something in sort of the live tweeting realm, that is also very, very powerful by itself. I know a lot of people who are out on the streets and they just do live tweeting. So
Yeah.
that's something that, you know, if your phone is not capable of doing that. So sorry.
Yeah, I would add to that for the streaming. There's a term that started, I don't know where or when or who did it. I don't
San
know who to
Diego.
credit for it.
San
but
Diego.
the Tweet Team,
That's San
which is
Diego.
streaming and tweeting. So if you can have a partner that's live tweeting and you're streaming, you can be a Tweet Team together, which I think is a really fun little phrase. And it's just, you want to, if at all possible, have a buddy with you as well. That's another thing in the best practices. Somebody to watch your back. You know, I did get mugged in the middle of a march streaming in Oakland. I had somebody come up behind me, grab my phone, and take off. So, and I had a buddy, but it wasn't effective in that case. But it's always good to have somebody that's got your back, that's helping to watch, because you're really focused on the camera, and you want to be composing your frame and not just walking around with it at chest height and not watching what's coming through your frame, but try to be actually composing, and if you can, watch the chat room. So it's great if you have somebody to watch your back.
If you do have just a regular camcorder, there's a new product that just came out on the market last year, really great. It's called iFi. Has a Wi-Fi device in the SD card, and it will transmit your footage to a laptop or tablet device or smartphone or anything like that. I highly recommend doing that. And in fact, and if you've got a buddy with you, have the Wi-Fi transmitting to his device rather than yours. So if something happens to you,
It's still there.
it's going to him.
Thanks, Rob.
That's
How
good.
much
What's it
range
called
devices?
again? For
They
the,
range anywhere for about, I think, $40 to like $80. They have different levels because it is an SD card. It doesn't have memory on itself. They record to, but it also transmits. There's some stuff that transmits while you're recording, and then there's like a lower, cheaper one that transmits after you've stopped recording.
Thank you
Wow.
for that information, Rob.
What's it called? Do we know?
iFi.
iFi.
EYE-FI.
Spell it again?
EYE.
Oh, like
Yeah,
iFi. Okay.
iFi.
iFi. So you can enable an SD card to transmit information. So that's another way if you just have a camcorder.
Great.
That's fantastic to know.
Great.
Does that requires a Wi-Fi connection, like a hotspot, right?
Well, I mean, you can do it, wireless. If your phone has Wi-Fi capability, you can do ad hoc network with it'll recognize.
If anyone wants to talk about ad hoc networking on their phone, you can ask me.
Guys, right here.
Question over here.
Is there any way to interface? Like I have a Canon that can take really good video, really high definition. Is there any way I can interface that with a, working with a tweet?
Well, I mean, this device sounds like it would work with that. Possibly.
It won't live stream though.
Right.
That's the only thing. So I mean, you can record your stuff, and
have it uploaded.
I believe I haven't messed around with it too much, but I believe you can even set it up. So there's an application for your phone, an iFi application. So you can set it up as soon as it's uploaded to your phone. It'll upload to YouTube or wherever you want to upload it to.
Automatically?
Yes, automatically.
Wow.
So can't you use the cameras as a like a webcam and do it that way? With the
No,
hotspot?
they don't have
That's what
a
we're talking about
capability
here.
to live stream from the camera yet.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
really hoping to see
not
that
with
kind
that
of technology
connection.
come onto the market in the next couple of years, but it's not there yet.
There's only one device that I know of right now that actually lets you take a standard camera and actually stream directly off that, and that's the Teradek Cube,
Oh,
and
you're
it's
right.
extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, it's really expensive. I mean, it's really intended for broadcasters.
Exactly.
And to be perfectly honest, I've worked with and know a few people who have been and are using Teradek, and I know a number of people who have had nothing but problems with it for such an expensive piece of gear.
Okay.
Extraordinary.
So if you've got the money to spend on it and you want to play around, but the people who I've known who use it have said that they wish they never bought it. It was totally unreliable.
But it's one of those things where there's a market for competition, and eventually other people come into the market. There's obviously a need for it. It'll happen eventually.
It will.
It's just not there yet.
It will, but one of the other things that always keep in mind with that still is you're still, regardless of whether you're working off a cellular phone or a Canon or whatever, those three elements that we were talking about before, power, transmission, and camera, right? So power is still going to be an issue. So if you have no way to charge your camera, you're going to be limited to whatever that battery life is. regardless of the other.
But they're going to get a whole lot more battery life as opposed to live streaming
which
video.
you have to constantly send out that
exactly, because you're just sending one still image, intermittently. It's not going to use as much power.
Yes.
There's one thing that I wanted to add. When I set up my Ustream account and I set up my Twitter, it's really helpful to have Selena on the computer at home while I'm live streaming, because she can do the moderation on the chat. And somehow it came out really cool because my Twitter is Orange Crew, and then when she comes on, I'm going in the chat, she comes on Orange Crew too.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure how that happened, but...
I can tell you.
Okay, cool.
It's actually based on the way Ustream does you joining the channel. So if you join the channel twice, it'll index it. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever many times you log in. I mean, that's a way so it can have a unique ID for the chat.
Oh, so I can't take credit for that?
Sure you can.
But anyways, it came out really cool. And also what's really important is while I'm streaming, if you want to get some viewers real quick, real fast, plus there's OccupyStreams.com, and that goes straight to global as soon as you put it up, and you can copy and paste the Ustream link. If you have somebody at home, you can copy and paste that Ustream link on the chat room in global, and then Occupy Wall Street gets the footage which they need. And once you get them to have the footage, all of a sudden you'll see your viewers just kind of go straight up.
Yeah, that's another piece is notifying Ustream. You can email Ustream and let them know that you're going to be live. You can create relationships with other news outlets, like I have a relationship with KPFK.
We love video.
Yeah. So the press loves it. So if you can create relationships with media outlets, they can, I get put often on the front page of the KPFK website. So that's another, way to build your audience and get more eyes on it. It's developing those relationships with, I would encourage sympathetic media for those.
I just wanted to let everybody know that it's 11:30
right
now.
Okay, great. Yeah, I have 2 minutes left. I was just going to announce we're wrapping this up. We got exactly 2 minutes left. There was one more point that I thought was important from the best practices is that you want to be restarting your stream no matter what under 2 hours. In under 2 hours. So when you're going, it shows in minutes on my iPhone, so it'd be 120 minutes. You want to be shutting down and restarting the stream so that it's archived
because at the 2-hour point, based on some of these technologies, it will not load that video later. So essentially you've done all this work, you've worked really hard on capturing all this footage, and then no one can see the archived version of it.
Yeah, you may lose the archive.
You may lose it.
I can speak from experience.
You could.
Yeah, I've done 7 hours and lost 7 hours because I didn't know that before. So
really lame.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking when that happens. But there's the 2 hours versus 3 hours.
Yeah,
right?
there's another piece of it. So through some weird way that they have this set up, no one will see the 2 hours, but sometimes you can still access it and then go and edit it down to a smaller portion that then will work. So don't go over 2 hours if you can help it, and I usually recommend somewhere between 1 hour and 2 hours, finding your stopping point, because you don't want to be in a situation where you want to cover a whole bunch of things that are just now happening and have to stop midstream. So if you have a good breaking point between the 1 hour and 2 hour mark, stop and restart, and then go on from there.
Yeah, it's helpful also to help locate specific moments that you might be looking for when you're editing later. It helps to have a fresh start and say, oh, well, that happened after I restarted or before I started. So it just helps to find footage. So any questions? Because it is time to get over to Disneyland. Any last questions, comments? All right. If anyone has questions, you can reach any of us. We are most reachable, I would say, via Twitter. It kind of becomes the language in the stream team world.
Twitter will be your best friend if you start streaming. Because it's a, it becomes a multifaceted platform. And, when they were speaking earlier about live tweeting, that is something that your viewers can do also. So if you have mods or you have regular viewers, because as often now that many of us have been streaming and doing this for up to a year. We've got people who, when we go live, they come on and they start, and they can live tweet from watching your stream. So they tweet out quotes, they tweet out where you are, what's going on, and there's in your chat, your chatters can click on Twitter, and so it'll come up in the Ustream chat, but then it goes out to Twitter. And so when they do that, it also attaches your stream link to it. So when you've got somebody live tweeting who's watching your stream, every time they say something, your stream link goes out, and that's
powerful.
That helps build the audience too.
Right there.
So the best way to reach us is probably Twitter. My Twitter is Twitter's always the @ symbol. So I hope everybody's going to go create a Twitter account today, whether you're going to be streaming or not. It's a great tool for any activist. So my handle on Twitter is Occupy Freedom LA.
Mine is @cross_x_bones.
And
I'm at Courtney Occupy.
Courtney Occupy. So if anybody has any questions,
Little shameless self-promotion.
Yes, go for it.
If you guys have any good footage of police misconduct or anything like that, copblock.org is interested in that. We have also a local chapter that just started, Orange County Cop Block on Facebook. That's our main purpose, is to go out there and film the police. If you guys have anything, send it to us. We'll get it out there. We'll increase your audience.
FTP, film the police.
Thank you, you guys. Freedom, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us for us.
Yeah,
And,
let's
and
do it. We want an army of streamers out there capturing all
and
this.
remember, you guys, we need to really watch these youngsters. We got our flyers. I have a feeling, we were talking about this earlier.